We're looking at a 2007 Suzuki Grand Vitara, and the rear wheel started to shake. You can actually hear some noise. And if you take a look at this drum, you can see how wobbly it is. So to replace the rear wheel hub and bearing assembly, you basically take off the wheel. There's little bolts right. There's little holes right here with threads, and you could screw a bolt in here, and it would push this cylinder or the brake cylinder off. Or you can just try smacking it with a hammer all around and make it come loose, and that's what I did here. Just pull it off. Pulled it off. You can see how shaky this is. The wheel is attached to this. The whole wheel just shook like crazy, especially when you're training. So you can see that this is the hub assembly, and there's a bolt right there in the back. One right here. So 4 total holding this on. One right there from the back. So you can see the bolt right there. You basically have to undo this main lug bolt, and then those 4, and this should come off. The way you can, if you don't have any fancy tools, I don't have here, like me, you can use a pry bar. Put a pry bar across like this to hold this wheel from spinning, because when you're going to try to spin this, most likely, even in gear and drive, through the drive shafts and the system, it's still going to spin through, so you have to hold this back. Or you can use an impact. So this is that part. So I had to go out and buy a 32mm socket right here to go into this nut. This nut holds the half shaft in place. I undid the bolts from the back. You use a 14mm or a 9/16 open box wrench like this, and if you need extra leverage, which you probably already know, but you could take a, let's see, you're holding it like that, you can lock another wrench like this and use that as leverage to undo the nut. Actually, I highly recommend dual tools. Big fan. This case, really nice. You take off 2 10mm bolts right here, little bolts, just to get this out of the way. Now the tricky part, which I was kind of losing my temper, like seemed impossible, but if you take a look at this, this is the new hub assembly. So it sits like that in there, and it has this metal part that goes inside, and it did not want to come out. So, and there's no way to really grab it, you know, and you have these brake parts right here that you don't really want to smack or damage, so you can't really press hard, you know, everything is rusted in. By the way, before I move on, I did find my wrench, and surprisingly it took it off. It took that nut off, even though it's so weak. And it looks like whoever was here last didn't even see this indentation right here. When you spin this nut on at the end, you're supposed to smack it instead of using a cobbler pin. That's how it retains for safety. Anyway, but in a scenario where you don't have a gun, or it's too weak, and you can't you can't hold the wheel obviously with your hands, you could use like a bar like this. Put these guys on. Well, I guess you don't really have to unscrew, because you don't. If you damage the threads, it doesn't matter. But for the ones you're putting on, you don't want to damage them. So just screw these on. Put this bar like this, a long bar of some sort, and just have it press into the ground. And when you start to unspin it, it's gonna lock itself into the ground, and they'll give you, you know, enough torque where you can just jump on that branch real quick and I'll unscrew this. I'll break that loose. And same with tightening, you can just reverse the order, whatever makes sense, untighten it. So anyway, the way I got this off, I haven't taken it off yet, but I just had to beat it, and you can see the damage here and here. I was just beating it back and forth on all the sides. These people. And finally, it popped off, so I'm gonna take it off right now. Here's the old hub right here. The bearing is messed up. Actually, this one doesn't want to spin at all. Oh, there it goes. Okay. This bearing, it wobbles on it in itself. It came off right here. There's a metal line in the back. You don't want to damage it. Everything is rusty right here. You can see all that rust. I'm going to clean it out and put a little oil in there. You can see that sensor right there. That's your ABS sensor. And basically, when your tire rotates, usually they have little notches, and these ones don't. But through some mechanism, it senses. Every time it makes a rotation, it registers with that device right there. Oh, the notches are right there. The notches are actually part of the half shaft. Those little notches make a little magnetic field flux, and it knows where you're at basically for the ABS. So I'm gonna clean it out right now and reinstall it. So I cleaned it using a little brush like this, and actually those were not notches, it was just dirt. So I'm not quite sure how that works. Probably magic. It doesn't have notches like my GSM did. So yeah, I put a little bit of oil there. I don't want to go crazy. I caught it in one of these bolts right here from the back side. I'm going to try to reinstall it now. So assembly back is actually easier than taking off, unless if this guy just falls out for you when you're taking off. The beating out part is really hard, difficult to do. Not too difficult, but nerve-wracking because you're swinging next to these components. I had to put the two 10mm back in, and then when you catch it, when you catch one bolt, make sure you go with your finger. Don't just use any kind of tool. Get to start going in so you're not cross-threading, and catch all 4 bolts like that. And then when you start tightening it, don't just tighten one and the other, because you're fitting into a tight spot. So tighten here, then across here, and jump up, and do a cross like that, up, and kind of zigzag back and forth, and then finally tighten it. When I was at the end, you don't really have to go zigzag once you get all of them tight. When I was unscrewing this, I was using that trick I showed you earlier, and it felt like I was only putting like 40 maybe pounds of pressure at that leverage where it broke. So I just tightened it basically as hard as I can. If you're into the torque, you can look that up. I've never done that before. I always just tighten by hand. This guy, actually I just tried spinning it with a wrench like this, with a 1/2 inch ratchet, and on this particular car, since it's a 4-wheel drive and park, it doesn't spin, so you don't even need to do that kind of trick. If you do it on a different car, you might have to do that, but I basically just tightened it as hard as the gun would take it, and I could actually jump, like press it a little more, and it'll go a little more. And the end, I just beat it a little bit, a couple of swings with a hammer, and that's it. You don't want to over tighten this. This doesn't need to be too tight. And whoever was here last time, they didn't press that safety indentation in, so I'm gonna do that right now. So using a screwdriver, flat blade probably be better. I just put it on and just beat it in. You don't have to go too hard, because you can actually see the metal start to crack. You just want to make a little indent, and when you're taking this off, you have to pry it with something. take it off. I definitely like the cobbler pin better. It was just a hole, cobbler pin goes through and then you just bend it as a retainer. This, you're technically supposed to, I mean, this was a new bolt or nut, but every time you take these off you have to get a new nut, not the case on the cobbler pin. So I'm going to put this guy back on. So this guy's back on and I'm ready to put the wheel back. When the battery's almost dead on the phone, so I gotta rub this up. When you're picking a car up like this, make sure you got something below it, just in case it falls. Make sure you check your wheels. Chalk. Anyway, so the car doesn't roll. What else? If you're gonna climb under there, also you can put a jack. Not a jack, but a jack stand. Also, when you're picking the car up, it can be a different vehicle, but you want to press into the leaf spring portion. That way, otherwise, when you're picking the car up, the whole wheel starts to drop because that's spring. But if you're pressing right under it, it just picks the wheel up instantly almost. When I was assembling everything back, I put some oil on the bolts. It's a good thing to do. And just to go over all the tools that I used here, is a 32mm socket, a 9/16 or 14mm open box wrench with a bigger open box wrench for leverage, a hammer, and a 10mm over here. It can be a socket or a wrench. Definitely a socket makes it easier. And that's it. Pretty simple procedure. It's the first time actually ever doing a wheel hub replacement. I've done brake jobs before, stuff like that, but never a bearing. I actually didn't know that they even have a whole wheel hub with the bearing in, which makes it very easy actually to replace, as opposed to pressing a bearing out. That's what I thought I had to do. But you just go to the store, pick up a wheel hub or order it online, wheel hub assembly, and just replace it. That's it. For this Grand Vitara, this cost me, oh, that one, from O'Reilly, Master Pro Undercar, cost me $140 plus tax. It's insane. I feel like I was buying a part for a Maserati or something, but I guess they're not cheap, especially for Suzuki. Probably way more expensive brands there too. I went to Rock Auto, and you know, if you go with the economy ones, like $75, which I probably won't do. But the top end ones are like 120 to 140. So it's pretty much the same everywhere. This Master Pro, I'm not sure. Made in China, so not sure. They actually give you right here the torque. It fits a Kizashi all-wheel drive. No torque data, so just do whatever you want, dude. You're good. Just go as hard as it goes. That's it, man. Anyway, there's not much to fail here, really, except the whole wheel flying off and you dying. But anyway, so yeah, so that's pretty much it. It's done. Gotta put the wheel back on and it's ready to go.